So we have found that some yogis they have been talking among themselves while they are supposed to be meditating. Okay? And not just once, I saw several times. So here we want to emphasize very strongly that yogis are not supposed to talk during talk among each other during a time of your retreat here. Okay, so talking is a great hindrance to the development of insight. So, in the first night of the retreat during the talk, we told all the yogis that I must follow the rules of the center. Okay? So, the rules of the center, as we explained, is meant to foster a conducive meditative uh, environment that supports the yogi to make progress in their meditation. Okay? So by talking among yourself, okay, you are effectively destroying this conducive environment for others, okay, who are sincerely striving in the Dhamma. Okay? And this is something akusala, unwholesome. Okay? Mm. So, so by talking among yourself, you are not only distracting yourself from the practice, you are not only hindering your own development of your own practice, okay? You are also disturbing others in their meditation, okay? Possibly even destroying their practice. Okay? So some yogis may be on the verge of about to uh, enter into some state of samadhi or about to realize some insight. Then you start talking and then you destroy that for them. Okay? So this is something very unwholesome. Okay? As a yogi, you cannot afford uh, to do such unwholesome action that destroy the practice of other yogis. Okay? Mm. So, so if you cannot follow the rules of that's been set up by the center in order to preserve this conducive meditative environment, if you keep disrupting this environment for the other yogis, okay, then we may have to ask you to leave so that you do not continue to disturb others who are sincere in their practice. Okay? So we want to be fair to others who are striving very hard in their practice. Okay? So we may have to ask you to leave. Mm. Okay, so far in the Dhamma talks we have discussed about doing the sitting meditation using on by noting rising falling as the primary object. Mm. So while rising falling is very suitable objects for the development of vipassana. Mm. But some yogis, for whatever reason, they have some difficulty in discerning, noting the rising and falling. Okay? Those some yogis, uh, they can discern the rising falling, but even though they can discern, at times it is not clear. So sometimes they can discern, and often they cannot. And most of the time, they find themselves struggling to discern or note rising, falling. Okay, various reasons for this. Mm. Sometimes, for some yogis, is simply because uh, a rising, falling. So rising, falling, it can become very subtle sometimes, especially when your mind becomes very calm, peaceful. As you develop your practice, the mind will start to calm down, become peaceful. Okay? Then the rising, falling also can become rather subtle, right? Because when your mind become calm and peaceful, your breathing also become calm and peaceful. So the rising, falling also, yeah, correspondingly become more and more subtle. Okay, when this happens, sometimes yogi do not exert enough effort to note the subtle rising and falling. So this is one reason. So in this case, of course, the yogi need to increase the noting effort. So you need to increase the effort to feel more carefully the more subtle nature of rising and falling. Okay. Mm. But in this case, as we mentioned the other day, in order to discern more subtle objects, you need to soften the mind. Mhm. Mm. So if the mind is soft, like water, you're able to discern the more subtle, the more refined objects. Where your mind is very hard, like a piece of ice, it's very difficult to discern the more subtle and refined objects. So first, you have to soften your mind, relax. Mm. So don't force the mind, soften the mind, okay? And then bring the attention to the subtle rising and falling, and then note with extra effort, okay? In order to feel carefully into the nature of the rising and falling. Okay? So you have to, mind have to be very soft, okay? But at the same time, energetic. Yeah? Feel. Okay? You make effort to feel, yeah? Not to force the mind under the object. So make the effort to feel with this soft mind, okay? Relaxed mind. Yeah? So your mind is soft, but it's energetic, persistent. Keep feeling into the nature. Yeah? Then even the subtle nature will appear clearly to the mind. Mm. Then another reason is uh, this one we have also explained earlier, is that the yogi, uh, the rising falling is not clear because the yogi is looking at the wrong place. And so, for example, yeah, the rising falling is occurring on the chest, but you are trying to note the rising falling in the abdomen. uh, then, of course, you cannot discern the rising falling. It's simply not there. No matter how hard you try to find it there, it's simply not there. You try too hard, then you end up stress, okay, and tension. Okay? So as we have explained, you note the rising, falling wherever it occurs, wherever it appears most clearly. Okay, if the rising, falling appear most clearly in the abdomen, then you note the rising, falling on the abdomen. Yeah. Uh, but if it appear more clearly on the chest, you're a chest breather. uh, So and then you note the rising, falling as it appear on the chest. Okay? If rising, falling appear clearly around the diaphragm, and then you note it around the diaphragm, wherever it appears most clearly. You direct your attention there and you note it there. And then there are other reasons. So, for example, some yogis they're unable to discern the rising falling clearly because simply because the body is thin. Yeah. And then when your body is thin and your breathing becomes shallow, yeah, then there be hardly any movement of rising falling. Okay? So then the rising falling becomes very difficult to discern. Okay? Mm. Then in this case, don't try to breathe harder. Okay, then you end up controlling the breathing, which will be another problem. Mm. Mm. Yeah, yes, which is actually another reason why some yogis are unable to discern the rising falling. And it's because uh, unconsciously they're trying to control the breathing. Mm. So when you're controlling the breathing, then especially when unconsciously trying to control the breathing, then the breathing uh, cannot flow smoothly. Okay? So you're holding on very tightly to the breath. Okay? So then there'll be hardly any rising and falling movement. Okay? Mm. Then it'll be difficult to discern the rising falling. Mm. So if you find that you have any difficulty discerning rising and falling, don't wait. Don't wait for the rising falling to be clear, or don't wait for it to come back. Okay, because as long as you're waiting there, you're not noting yet. That means you're not meditating. Okay, meditation means noting. Okay? But if you're waiting around, you're not noting, then you're not meditating. And there's no continuity uh, in your meditation, in the development of your meditation. So you have difficulty discerning the rising, falling, then immediately you can switch the primary object, switch to noting an alternative primary object, which is sitting, touching. Okay? So today, introduce you all to this an alternative primary object, alternative to rising and falling, the sitting and touching. Mm. Mm. So sitting, touching, it consists of two objects, sitting and touching. Okay? So we talk about sitting first. So what is sitting? Sitting, noting sitting means noting the sitting posture. Okay? So it means you note the uprightness of the body and the sensation of the uprightness of the body while you are uh, holding the sitting posture. Okay? So you bring your attention to the body in the upright posture, upright position. Okay? And then you make effort to feel the sensation of the body in this upright position. Okay? So you bring your attention to the body, and then you can feel there's some physical force holding the body up in an upright position, is supporting the body in the upright position. Okay? So you can feel the sensation connected with this uprightness. Usually you feel a sensation like stiffness or tightness or rigidity. Mm. And usually this sensation is clearest along the spine, the backbone. Okay? So you can feel, you bring your attention to the body in this upright position. You can feel there is this physical force, there is physical force of support that is supporting the body, holding it up in an upright position. Mm. Mm. So, if without this force, the body start to slouch uh, and start to collapse. Mm. Mm. So, if you were to straighten the body up again, and then again you can feel this force, the sensation of uprightness. Okay? Mm. So you bring your attention to that sensation of the physical force that's holding the body in upright position. That sensation of stiffness or tightness or rigidity. Okay? Mm. So, so you note this sensation of the uprightness. You note it as sitting, sitting, sitting. That's called noting the sitting. Mm. 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 Then touching. So noting or touching. So touching means the experience of touch. That focus uh, at the touch point. So there are various uh, touch points in the body. So for example, you're sitting, so like the buttock is touching on the meditation seat. Okay? So there are 2 points there, right buttock, left buttock. Okay? Your legs are also touching on the seat. Okay? So again, there are 2 points, right leg, left leg. Okay? Your hands are also touching. So depending on how you position your hand. Okay? So you're positioning your hand, touching together. There's one touch point. So you put like this, that's just one touch point. Okay? While you put your hand like this, then there are two touch point. Yes. Okay. The hand touching on the uh, right and the left hand touching on the left leg. So these are called touch points. Mm. Mm. So some yogis even know the lips touching. Okay, this is also a touch point. Okay. So you bring your attention to the touch point, and then you note the sensation that are present at the touch point. So you bring your attention there, and then you feel, make effort to feel the sensation that are present. So whatever sensation there are. So right now you feel there warmness, there's a slight pressure, there's firmness, there's roughness, and there's some very tiny vibration. So you can feel all these different sensation when you bring your attention to the touch point. Okay, so you note that experience of the sensation at the touch point. And you note it as touching, touching, touching. Mm. There's nothing of touching. So in order to take sitting touching as a primary object, in order to not sitting touching, first you need to choose uh, touch points. So you choose 2 or 3 touch points. You have to uh, first determine which touch point you want to note first. Okay? So choosing a touch point, choose touch points that are clear, uh, where the sensations is very distinct and clear, and the mind can easily discern it. Okay? So don't choose touch points where the sensations are very difficult to listen. Okay. Mm. Also, uh, choose touch points that are not too close together, especially in the beginning of your practice, when the mindfulness is not sufficiently developed yet. Okay? So, so the mindfulness may not be sharp enough. Okay? So you choose touch points that are very close together. You may mix them up, okay, one with the other. Okay? So you choose touch points that are far away from each other, so that you cannot mix them up. Okay? Mm. So let's say you choose three touch points. Let's say you put uh, your hands, each one on one leg, right? Your right hand on the right leg, left hand on the left leg. Yeah? So there are two touch points there. So you choose these two touch points and then plus, let's say you choose another point, let's say the buttock. Okay? So buttock in the beginning, you just take the whole thing as one touch point. Okay. Mm. So, so you choose these three touch points. Okay. And then you can begin to note. Okay. So in noting, sitting, touching, you alternate between noting of sitting and noting of touching. Okay. So first you begin with noting of sitting. So you bring your attention to the body in right position. Feel the uprightness of the body. Okay? Feel the sensation of uprightness. Okay? And then you note sitting, 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 sitting. Okay? So uh, you know, 7, 8 times. Okay? Roughly 7, 8 times. You don't have to count. You don't have to be precise. Just rough 7, 8 times. That's not sitting, 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 sitting. 7, 8 times. Okay? Mm. And then after that, uh, immediately you switch to noting of touching. Okay, so you bring your attention immediately so don't not sitting, and then you wait for a while, rest, and then you switch. Immediately you note 7, 8 times. Immediately switch to noting of touching. Yeah, and so you start with the first touch point. Let's say the hand touching the right hand touching. Okay, and so you bring your attention to the touch point. Okay? Note the sensation, not touching. Okay, not precisely, not clearly, uh, energetically. Okay, so you note 7, 8 times again. Touching, 7, 8 times roughly. Okay, and then immediately switch the attention back to sitting. Again, not sitting 7, 8 times. Then immediately switch to the next touch point. Let's say the left hand touching. Okay? And then again, you're not touching 7, 8 times. Then again, immediately switch back to sitting, sitting. And then after that, switch to the third touch point, the buttock. Okay? Again, you're not touching 7, 8 times. And then back to sitting. Okay? Then next, you finish all the 3 points. What do? Go back to the first touch point. Okay. So, so you alternate between sitting and touching. Okay. And the touch point, you go systematically. And the first touch point, then the second touch point, then the third touch point, then back to the first. Okay. And so on. Okay. So, and so each time when you're not sitting, or you're not touching. Each time when you need to put energy into the noting. Okay, make effort. Put energy into the noting. Make effort to feel uh, the sensation that are present, whether with the sitting or with the touching. Yeah? Make effort to feel the sensation precisely, clearly. So by putting effort into each noting the sensation that arise, whether with sitting or with touching, noting it precisely, noting clearly, making effort in this way. Mm. The mindfulness will develop its strength with each moment of noting. Because each moment you're putting effort, putting energy into the mindful noting. Okay, so moment to moment to moment, the mindfulness will develop its strength. Okay? So in the beginning, you find that you need to exert the mind, put in a lot of effort to noting continuously each moment. So, but with continuous energetic noting, okay? So after some time, you find that the mindfulness becomes stronger and stronger. And so it's able to note continuously, able to note smoothly. Okay? So it's able to remain easily with noting of each sitting, each touching. Okay? When you're not sitting, the mindfulness is able to stick with the noting of sitting without being distracted away. Okay? When you're not touching also, touching, it remains continuously on the touching without being distracted away. Okay? And you find that it's able also to switch easily from noting or sitting to touching, noting or touching back to noting or sitting. It's able to switch easily. In the beginning, it may not be easy. You need to effort to direct it properly. Okay? Mm. After some time, when the mindfulness develops, it has a strength of continuity. It can switch very easily. Okay? Mm. So then the mindfulness, if I starts to flow smoothly, noting moment to moment to moment continuously, from sitting to touching, from touching back to sitting again to touching, and so on. It flows smoothly, moment to moment to moment. He's able to. Where were we? Yeah. So, so after some time, mindfulness develop, it starts to flow smoothly. Okay? So it's able to pick one sensation after another, continuously and clearly. Okay? So once the mindfulness starts to flow smoothly and the object is clear, then uh, uh, what you can do is if you find that uh, one the points or the sitting posture is particularly clear. Okay, so when you go to the touch point, so you can note the touch point continuously. If it is clear, note it continuously uh, for a few minutes, not 7, 8 times, a few minutes. Keep the mind there, hold the mind there, note for a few minutes or as long as you can, okay, before you switch. Okay? Uh, so when the sitting is clear, you continue to note the sitting, not continuously for a few minutes before you switch to touching. Okay? So you can stay longer at the sitting and the touching. Okay? If it is clear. Okay? Mm. Mm. And secondary objects are handled uh, in the same way as when you are noting rising, falling as the primary object. Okay? So that means if the say the sound or the bodily sensation or the smell that arise. They are not prominent. They do not distract your attention, do not pull your attention away from the sitting touching. Then you can safely ignore this object. Okay? But if the sound or the bodily sensation or the smell is very distinct, very clear, pulls your attention away from sitting touching, is predominant, and then you turn your attention, leave behind the sitting and touching, shift your complete attention to note the secondary object. Note until they disappear. Okay? And then once they disappear, immediately shift the attention back to note the sitting and touching. Okay? But mental states that arise, especially that connected with the hindrances, such as restlessness, a wandering mind, the aversion, dislike, desire, attachment, the sleepiness, tiredness, laziness. And so all this should be noted immediately when they arise, not energetically dispel them, and then return to the noting of sitting and touching. Now, as you are noting sitting and touching, hmm, rising, falling can become clear again. Okay? So especially when you are unable to discern rising, falling because you are controlling the breath. Okay? So when you divert your attention away from the breath, from the rising, falling, to note the sitting, touching, then automatically the mind release the control of the breathing. Then the breathing becomes smooth again. And when it becomes smooth, rising, falling will appear clearly again. Mm. So if you find, as you're noting sitting, touching, and the rising, falling appears clearly again, then you can return your attention to note rising, falling again. Okay? Mm. But if you find that you return to noting rising, falling, and after a while, it becomes not clear again, then you can return to not sitting, touching again. Okay? Mm. However, if you find that the rising, falling keeps becoming not clear and you're constantly going back and forth between noting of rising, falling and noting of sitting, touching, then in that case, you might as well just stick with the noting of sitting, touching without going back again to noting of rising and falling. That means for the whole duration of the sitting meditation, you just note sitting, touching. Mm. Mm. Or if you find that when you switch to noting of sitting and touching, you find that uh, uh, mindfulness is developing. Mindfulness develop, it become continuous, and the object is clear. uh, that means noting is of sitting, touching is going on very well. Okay? Then in this case also, you can just stick to noting of sitting and touching without going back to noting of rising and falling. Okay? Some yogis think that only noting of rising, falling is vipassana. Okay? Uh, so this is not correct. Okay? Because sitting, touching is a valid vipassana object, not just rising, falling. Okay? Now, vipassana object is only two. Okay? Nama, rupa. Okay? Nama, rupa, dhamma. Mental nature, physical nature. Okay? So, sitting, touching is nama, rupa. Is rupa, right? So sitting is the wind element, element of support, uh, that gives rise to the uprightness of the body. And touching also, various physical elements involved can be experienced in noting of touching. Okay. Mm. And as your mindfulness develop also, as you're not sitting, touching, you may be able to notice also the noting mind or the knowing mind that's experiencing the object. Okay, and that's nama. Okay, so sitting, noting a sitting, touching uh, is also noting of nama rupa. So it's a valid vipassana object. And by noting, sitting, and touching, you can also develop vipassana insight. Okay, not just noting of rising and falling. Okay, so if you find that uh, mm, the noting of sitting, touching is going on very well, you can stick to it without having to return to noting of rising, falling. Mm, Okay, let's stop here today.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
So you can do your walking meditation for 45 minutes until 8:15, and meditate until sitting until 9 p.m.